Hey Rob, what do we do?
This parsha is Parashas Bitachin. All of the journeys, all of the legs of the journeys, of the entire time from leaving Mitzrayim is preparation for Gula, like we spoke about in the previous weeks. That Gula is not something you can simply impose upon a people, as nice as it sounds, right? As nice as it seems to pull people out of slavery. There's the Stockholm syndrome, where after a period of time, people get used to their captors. They have to defend their captors, even though they were kidnapped, and there's a certain mentality, certain logic to, or lack of logic for that matter, to how people deal with reality. I mean, we see it, cognitive dissonance and all the things that happen, and how many times we've made mistakes, tragic mistakes that we knew but in advance, like you just read right now, and things we could have done, about, and people just don't say anything, do anything. It takes a long time for people to adjust. First of all, the self-honesty itself is an extremely important midah. Of all the midah that if you had to just tell somebody, something, as they go in shaduchim, that what to look for in somebody. I think probably one of the best midahs that a person can have is self-honesty. A person who can be honest with himself in any situation, by definition, is going to be somebody who is going to be a loyal partner. Someone's going to be not just in terms of relationship, but in terms of how to deal with reality and the situations that arise, and the inner strength, right? So, but we see like this week's parsha, they come to Moshe Rabbeinu before before Kriyas Yamsuf, and they think they're going to drown. The Egyptians are pursuing them. They say to Moshe Rabbeinu, "Isn't this what we told you before we left? Were there not enough places to bury us in Mitzrayim? You took us out of here to die instead. We told you it's better to serve the Mitzrayim than to die here out in the desert." And you see, like the breaking away, the idea, the very fact that 4/5 chose to stay in Mitzrayim, even though that it was a place that they had suffered so much, even though they thought maybe perhaps they would be able to start all over again and do things differently, but still, that even the 1/5 that goes out, we see that they also, like the whole nation was talking like this. They weren't open to the idea of Gula. Kush Baruch understood this, and that's why there were 10 plagues, 10 makkos, because the first 9 plagues, at least, all 10 plagues really, were for the sake of the Jewish people, not so much for the sake of the Mitzrayim. For the sake of moving the Jewish people from the level of Galus to Geula, which we describe in different ways. It's the idea of adding the Aleph to the word Dam, to make an Adam Shalem. This is a very important point. It goes all the way back to Yaakov Avinu, crossing the Yabok. River represents the process of spiritual development, becoming an independent thinker, independent in your avodas Hashem, that you're not affected by the world around you so much, but you do what's emes, you do what's truth, you do what history demands of you, regardless of the situation, because you're part of a larger picture, and you see the big picture, the larger picture, and not just the small picture. The world today is basically just small pictures all over the place. There's nothing but small pictures. A great leader is somebody who has the big picture and is committed to the big picture, and he works upon that, and he works with it. But all the parshiot that we go through, all these parshas and all the development process from the time that we leave Mitzrayim until we finally actually get there, Eretz Canaan, Eretz Yisroel, is all part of that developing Gula concept and mentality. So every parsha, every incident, every episode of the Jewish people in the Midbar is another test, another nisayon, another thing to add to the collective understanding of what it means to be free people. And the truth is, we don't even understand it. And someone just, pointed out that we've actually never been in Gula. The one downtown, that one we go to often, right? But we've never actually been in Gula ever since Moshe. We never even leaving Mitzrayim. We've never really entered Gula completely, because you just go through the history. The Midbar, we died off in the desert. We came to Eretz Canaan. We didn't kill all the Canaanim, so we were affected by them. From the time even before we got there, by Reuven, Gad, Menashe rejecting Eretz Yisroel, the Medrash says it opened up the door to Galus Bavel down the road, even though it took 150 years before they finally be thrown out. But it was already in the works. The Galus was already in the works, because Reuven, Gad, Menashe were affected by Bilam and his plan. It's like it's never been a situation where we have actually experienced full Geula. Even though we got to the point of Beis Hamikdash, that even the night that Shlomo HaMelech built the Beis Hamikdash, he married Bas Paro, as the Gemara points out. By marrying Bas Paro, that was the beginning of the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. He just finished building the first Beis Hamikdash, and we're already talking about the destruction of the second Beis Hamikdash. It's already telling you that nothing, and that includes Galus Bavel and Geulas Bavel. right? But Gula from Babel was incomplete, and that's what the Megillah is telling you at the end, that Mordechai was only Merutzola Rovachav, only to the majority of his brothers, and as the Zohar points out in Shmos, on I believe it's Testament base, that it was a failure because the Jewish people did not come back en masse. They didn't come back completely as a nation. People stayed behind in Babel, and so we never really achieved the Gula the entire time. Then after that, there's a Median one. Actually, that's part of the Babel one. Then comes the Greek one, and that was certainly pretty much an unmitigated failure. Even though Hanukkah was a fantastic miracle and it was called the Gula, but we didn't really achieve very much. All we got basically was civil war in the end, and that civil war was followed up by the Romans coming and taking over the entire country, which has been now the last couple thousand of years is the Roman exile. So we never experienced Gula because we just can't grasp it. We just can't get the concept. On one hand, it's as simple as adding an aleph to the word Dalet Mem, developing the aleph. What does it mean to develop the aleph? I mean, that's what we've been talking about the entire time. So in Mitzrayim, the initial stages of developing the aleph was the Gilui Shechina, revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to show how much he's prepared to be involved in history to save the Jewish people and to do whatever he has to facilitate our spiritual growth and for us to achieve completion as a nation. But obviously, it's more than that because it's not. On one hand, it's not more than that. It's more like filling that out. Like that's the skeleton, and there's more to that. Basically, this parsha is extremely important. It's the first parsha after leaving Mitzrayim. We're now in the Midbar. We're in the desert, and already major things are happening. But the main thing that defines Klal Yisrael, the main midah, the main thing of all things we do that's different from the rest of the world, because in the end, there's not a lot that's different from us and the rest of the world. I mean, we have Taryag Mitzvot, 613 mitzvahs, but the truth is the Arabs have a whole bunch of mitzvahs, and the Christians have a whole bunch of mitzvahs. Okay, they don't have ours, and they took some of ours too. But ours are uniquely ours, and they're part of Taryag Mitzvot. But it's not the amount of mitzvahs that makes us unique, because the Western world has tons of mitzvahs. I mean, just go down to a downtown law office and take a look at all the books on the shelf of all the laws and statutes and and amendments and things like that. They've got a lot of commandments, and we just get thou shalt not jaywalk in especially major intersections. Thou shalt not run through red lights, even after 2:00 in the morning. I got the whole discussion with the lawyer once about why he thought it was ethical to drive through a red light at 2:00 in the morning when nobody else is around. But it's a mitzvah. It's not a mitzvah from Hashem necessarily, although directly you could say that it is. But it's a Western law. But what makes us uniquely different really is our bitachon. That's the key. That's the telltale sign of Klal Yisrael, our bitachon. That's what has to be developed, and that's the whole. Why did Hashem take us back to Yam Suf? Right, we left Mitzrayim. We're on our way out. We were actually past Yam Suf. We didn't have to go across the sea. We were already free of the Egyptians. We could have kept going straight all the way towards Canaan. Okay, so maybe they would have kept chasing it, but at some point in time they probably would have turned back. And if they wouldn't turn back, so Hashem could just simply take them out of the picture with a pillar of fire, whatever. Lots of ways to take the Egyptians out of the picture. But Kodesh Baruch Hu made us turn back, and that's what made Paro think that we were confused, because he saw us going in circles. Right, our GPS wasn't working or something like that, So we were going in circles. And they're basically they're confused. They're perplexed. In the end, they needed the guide for the perplexed, but the Rambam wasn't yet alive, so therefore wasn't available. And instead, we went to a circle. But it was planned, right? And the whole point of it was specifically to be there with the sea splitting and us going across it, because that was and there's all kinds of symbolism too, because that's how bris is performed. Like later on, we'll do the exact same thing. When you pass through two parts, like the pact of the halves, the bris and the basarim is the idea of passing through something. So passing through the sea also represented making a bris, making a covenant. There's all kinds of symbolism, a lot of things taking place in the parsha. But the main point of it is, and we'll see, that's the threads with the manna, right? Or the manna, that's the thread with Amalek later on. Amalek is what you get when you don't have bitachon. And because Amalek is in response to one pasuk, as Rashi points out, just one question. Be careful what you ask. Be careful what you ask, because you don't know what the answer is going to be. In this case, the answer was Amalek, and the one thing they asked was, Hayesh Hashem b'kibenu im ayin? Is God amongst us or not? Just that one question. Okay, it's a problematic question, especially since the Shekhinah was right there. The clouds of glory are hovering above. Their clothes aren't rotting. They got the beer Miriam. They got the man falling. Right? That's a new thing, but it's happening. And they asked this question. Okay, so you have to understand what the question means. But Because they weren't asking, is God amongst us or not? That's for sure, because they could see that, right? So as Leshem explains, it's a different type of question altogether. But the response was Amalek, because our enemies are basically the outer projection of our inner lacking. We create our enemies. The energy that our enemies use against us, in whatever form it takes, could be Amalek, it could be just Asaph, it could be the Russians, the Americans. Doesn't make it whatever that our enemies yet, thank God. But whatever form the enemies would attack us with, whatever that energy is, we created it from our lacking. And the lacking, in a sense, goes up and goes into the world, gets absorbed by a nation that's Mesugal. Amalek, for example, the Medrash asked the question, why? I think actually the Leshem asked the question and explains, and probably the Zohar more than likely asked the question, explains. But why was the snake was innocent in the beginning? The snake was simply a very sophisticated animal that stood up and walked on its feet like man did, could talk. It was very much, and the Gemara in Sanhedrin says it was meant to serve Adam. It was there to be a masharish for Adam, to serve him, basically. But unfortunately, Adam made a mistake of looking at the tree and the whole thing with Chava, and eventually the snake became the enemy, became the one who was the mouthpiece for the Sitra Achra. So the Zohar asks, why the snake of all the animals? So Kabbalistically, the snake is in the shape of a nun sofit, right? A long nun, right? Looks like a snake, right? Except this one had legs at the beginning. And that letter is considered to be, it's from the side of din. It's one of the letters that are strong din. So therefore, the Lashon of the Zohar, I believe, and what the Lashon brings down is the min matzah es min, it's mino, right? The species found its species. In other words, the Sitra Achra was looking for a vehicle to be able to go and mefatech Chava and Adam, and the snake was the most mesugal. It was the most appropriate. It was the best cart to get in, right? You want to drive very fast on the highway to get to where you're going. You're going to a car rental place. What do you look for? You don't look for a pickup truck, right? Because that's not going to go very fast. You look for a nice, racy sports car. It will take you there fast. It's musugal to drive a car. You're going to go for a nice, family, outing. You get a van or something like that. Whatever the vehicle has to suit the purpose. So the snake was there to suit the purpose. So every nation that plays some role in Jewish history, to either to support the Jewish people or to work against them, is because it's mesugal for that. But the actual driving force that makes the nation do that is not their own. It's the reverse. It's the negative of the positive that we're supposed to have. So if we asked a question that expressed a lack of bitachon, and Amalek attacks as a result of that, so he represents the antithesis of bitachon then, right? He's the enemy of bitachon and emunah. On a side point, by the way, just to make it's also part of the same idea because it's built into the idea. Mitzrayim was on the Madrega of Mem Teshar Tumah, right? That's what we spoke about last week. That's so commonplace. Everyone knows that Mitzrayim was on the level of Mem Teshar, the 49th level of spiritual impurity. Last week we discussed whether or not there's a 50th. It's irrelevant. It doesn't make a difference. 49 is you don't need to get worse than that. That's the lowest level, basically, before spiritual extinction. 49 levels of spiritual impurity. When that comes to your mind, right, what do you think of? What do you imagine society looks like? What does a society look like that's on the 49th level of spiritual impurity? What comes to your mind? What do you see? What can you imagine that place is going to be like?
Sodom, Gomorrah.
Which means what? How are the people dressed? How are the people behaving? I've asked this question several times. Almost every single time, the answer comes back is that it's basically preachers, right? It's a mock of preachers. It's a place of sexual immorality, and promiscuity, and people dressing completely, not modestly. That's people. When they think Mem Teshar Tumah, they think it's always going to be a sexual act, thing. That's the worst, the most open society in terms of sexuality. If that's the case, so how could Joseph be down there? How could Joseph be in the government? It's one thing to be off to the side in Goshen and not part of the world around you because, for example, there are places in Eretz Yisroel today, and certainly in North America and Europe, where it's not modest for a from Jew to go, right? So you avoid them. You don't go places like that. You're going to walk through Shalim, you don't walk down by Yehuda Street, right? At least not during the main hours in the summertime when people are not dressed properly. So you walk one street over. There's ways to get around them, right? But if you're in the government in a place like that, it's kind of hard, to avoid the situation. He's working for Potiphar. How could Yaakov bring his family down? Right? Even if you're fleeing for your life, is it permissible to go to a place that you're going to be exposed to tremendous sexual promiscuity? Is it permissible? Can you even do anything like that if there's no way to avoid it in the end? According to Mesilas Yesharim, seeing things you shouldn't look at is Yariv al Yavor. You should die instead of actually doing that aver. I mean, he's very strict about what your eyes look at, what you're able to see. Modesty is extremely important. You simply don't abandon it for the sake of safety necessarily, right? It's not so simple. So how could Yosef and how could Yaakov bring the Shiftei Ka and all their family down to Mitzrayim if it's total sexual promiscuity the entire time everywhere you go? Because that's not what it was. That's not Namtar Tuma. That's a mistake. It's such a mistake, and that's the reason why we have problems with Bitachin and Emunah, and why we make mistakes about places like America and Europe and Canada and all these various different places. Yeah, I saw something. Someone sent me a link to a program. It's like I actually recognize this program. It's a program where basically they showcase different inventions and different new ideas and all that. And the reason why they were sent to me because the person was discussing this. It's like a 20-minute presentation, and this presentation basically was who is the real you? Who is the real you? Who are you? Right? What are you? Basically, it's not a simple question, right? What makes up the you? You look in the mirror and there you are, right? But who's doing the looking? Because scientists cut open the brain, they look inside the brain, they can't find the merkaz, they can't find like a little room with a guy inside pulling levers, like right hand go this way, left hand go that way, eat your food. They can't find the merkaz. There's no central location that controls the entire body. The brain controls the entire body, but there's no central place that you could say that's you inside that head over there. So he was going to extremes to make the point that really the you is not like you, where you are in the center and you have memories and you have drives and you have pride and things like that, and there's like the central you over here. He was making the point that you basically is just a collective reality of all those things. And he brought as an example a watch. That was his first example. He said my watch has a face, right? So does that mean my watch is some kind of abstract reality that happens to have a face over here? Or it's just an expression. My watch, what's the watch? The watch is the totality of all the parts. And it happens to have a face. So the same way, and they talked about a waterfall, right? And talked about a tree, all kinds of things, and said everything in the entire universe, basically, whatever you're talking about, is the collective experience or reality of the thing that makes up the reality of the thing itself. So why should it be true about human beings? The same way that my watch is all those things combined together. There's not like some kind of central nervous system inside the watch that controls the entire thing. It's like a collective reality. So likewise, you are simply your memories and your experiences and your knowledge and your pride and your desires. That's who you are. Which it's always in flux. But there's no actual you per se. He was talking about 20 minutes of this entire idea.
So you're talking about the physical aspects.
Basically, that's what he's coming down to.
But there is if you take it into the next dimension, in other words, the watch, like you say, is a collection of the sum of its parts.
Right.
But the watch is really the neshama of the watch is time.
That's too abstract, and it's not even really necessarily true, because you're going the wrong direction. Because whatever you want to say, the bottom line is there's no comparison between a human being and a watch, or a human being and a waterfall, or a human being and anything else in the universe. A human being is uniquely, and even as an animal too, for that matter, by the way, you can't even compare a human to an animal. Because for all the similarities, it's vastly different in as much as one specific thing, making a free choice. A watch never makes a choice. It doesn't have to have a you. It doesn't have to have an inner reality. Same thing as a waterfall exists as a unit to be whatever it is, a prop on the stage. But human beings are uniquely different. I couldn't even watch the end of this thing. It was really so silly and so ridiculous because it was like anybody with simple understanding would understand there's so much more to human being that even if you can't find the reality, that's the mistake they've been making for a long time, is they're looking for something spiritual in the physical world. It's not there. Don't look in the cut the brain. For the other side, I've seen programs where they discuss how memories are basically totally like spiritual realities because they come and they go. There's nothing inside the brain per se. It's like there's no library inside there where you put it on your disk and you file it away in this little place over here. the memory doesn't, is not filed away in some place in the head. Basically, it's like it grabs it from abstract realities. From the other side, it's something uniquely different from the rest of the physical world. But the point is that this person, by doing this, right, the sly and subtle thing about all of this was that basically he was reducing man, who was made in the image of God, to nothing more than a watch, a very sophisticated watch, or a very sophisticated. There's no question that it's the most sophisticated collective reality of something in the entire universe, perhaps, right? But it's not anything special in terms of being godly or being spiritual. That's the bottom line, which means basically you don't need God. You don't need God. There's no this. What makes God important is the relationship that we can have to Him. The fact that we were created is insignificant. Everyone knows we were created, whether you evolved or didn't evolve. Something created us, right? But the concept of God itself, really, if you analyze it, it's not simply some creator. The concept of God is something that humans can relate to. That's the whole reality of it. In fact, this is what the lesson brings down, and really the Shem Arizal. The Rizal says that why did God make creation? Because if He didn't make creation, then you couldn't call Him Havaya. You couldn't call Him Yud Kei Vav Kei, because Yud Kei Vav Kei implies past, present, and future. So without creation, there's no past, present, and future. So Yud Kei Vav Kei is totally insignificant. What about the Aleph Dalet Nun Yud, right? The name that we pronounce when we're davening, which means my master, right? So what's the point of calling a person a master if he has no servant? And they go through all the various different names of Kodesh Baruch Hu. All the names of Hashem all have meaning only inasmuch as there's something there to be the other component. Because we're servants, He can be called the master. Because there's history, there's past, present, and future. Kel Shakai, He has mercy. Like, mercy to what? If there's nothing to be merciful to, so what's the mercy component doing in creation or existence whatsoever, altogether? So the point that Kabbalah makes, not that God needed this for Him to be complete, that's very important to point out, but He has these names, and therefore creation exists for the sake of relationship. So the whole reality of God as vis-a-vis ourselves is the fact that we can have a relationship to Him. But the relationship only makes a difference if there's some kind of spiritual component within man. Otherwise, it's just a watch. Do I care if my watch connects to God? As long as it's connected to atomic, time someplace in the world, that's all it concerns me. But connected to God, no, because there's no relationship between the watch and the master of the universe. That's Memtesh Shari Tuma. That's Memtesh Shari Tuma.
Not having a relationship.
Think about it for a second. What is the Avi Avos of Tuma?
But in creating a watch, for instance, who is the creator of the watch? Man is the creator of the watch. So he has had a relationship with the creation of that watch.
Yeah, but who cares? When you buy your watch, with that watch right now, you know who made it?
I know.
The person who made it. You know who made it? Do you even care? Does it make a difference to the use of that watch? Who's responsible for having made that watch?
Put it this way, I certainly want to go back and get a guarantee on it.
Yeah. Only if it breaks do you want to know who made that watch, right? As long as it's working, no problem. The creator and the relationship thing is really irrelevant, and that's today, for example, we've actually removed the creator to a large degree because basically things are mechanized and computers now create almost everything that you use enjoying this physical world for the most part. So the creator is now itself, a creation.
Maybe I was superimposing my relationship from a different perspective, because when I was thinking about the concept of making a watch, when you wake a watch, what you're doing is you yourself are acting in the capacity of God, right? And essentially, by doing that, if you're recognizing that you can create something, then you have to ask, well, who created you?
Right.
So I mean,
okay, no. So that's that's part of the limud as well.
Just didn't come together. It's a very complicated.
It is, but the main point over here is this is the idea of Memtesh Shari Tuma. What is the worst source of Tuma in creation? Spiritual impurity. What's the worst source? Like what's the father of all spiritual impurity? Death. A dead body, right? A dead body. Or anything that that comes in contact with a dead body will become what's called of tuma, right? And that's the source of tuma in the world, right? So why should a dead body is a dead body? What's the problem with a dead body? Why should a dead body be the source of the worship of tuma Nida is a source of tumah, and Zav is a source of tumah. We have different levels of tumah, but the worst of them all is a dead body. Why should a dead body be the worst form of tumah? What is tumah then? What kind of vacuum? A vacuum of what? Of obviously lack of life, right? There's no question that but what's the problem with the lack of life? The soul die? The soul doesn't die, right? So then what is life for? Life primarily is for the sake of giving the body an experience of God. That's what life is for. The soul always has that experience. In fact, without the body, the soul has it more than inside the body. Except there's a certain triumph when the soul can have the same experience of God in the body itself. The same way, for example, is that you can have a certain experience all the time that you enjoy. And then one day you try and share that with your child, right? And, it's not easy for the child to grasp what's going on, but somehow you get the child to be able to see what's happening and to experience it, and they actually have the experience on some level that you have perhaps on a more sophisticated level, but the fact that you're having it together with the child, at one time somehow makes it even more enjoyable for you. This collective, appreciation of an experience. Death basically cuts off the body's opportunity to be able to connect to God. That's tumah. Tumah is that which by definition acts as a barrier between God and the experience of God, and feeling God, the reality of God. That's what creates tumah. So therefore, mem teshari tumah, by definition, in Mitzrayim, they could have dressed perfectly normally, as much as Egyptians did, right? They could have been enough tsunua, enough modestly dressed for Yaakov and his family to come down there, and for Yosef to be part of the government, but it was so disconnected. That's really what Mitzrayim means. The word Mitzrayim itself is Meitzer Yam. That's what the word means. Meitzer is a border, a constriction. Yam is the gematria 50, alluding to the Nun Shari Bina. So as Kabbalah explains, that Mitzrayim is a place that constricted the Nun Shari Bina, the 50 gates of understanding, which are for what? To do what? That's the basis of Torah. Mitzrayim constricted a person's ability to be able to connect to Hashem. And that's what Moshe says. I come in the name of Hashem. Parashat says, Mi Hashem. Mi Hashem. We don't know from these things in this reality. Elohim we can deal with because Elohim is part of Teva. Everybody has to deal with Teva. And everybody's going to have gods that can try and control the Teva. Even though they're Avodah Zorah, the fact they're called gods, all they are basically are good luck charms. The Avodah Zorah is just man's way of trying to control his environment. At least believing he can control his environment. It's no different than that little switch on the wall, called comfort control, where you control the level of the temperature and the environment to make it comfortable. So they didn't have things like that in their day, that type of technology. So instead they brought animals, they sacrificed them, the priest, went did the whole basic thing, they went to war. And that was their way of controlling, buying off the gods to control the reality. And even if it didn't work, at least you could fool yourself into believing that somehow it had some kind of impact in the way, along in reality. But that's what Mitzrayim represents. Mitzrayim is the idea of cutting off a person's ability to connect to God. So if the Supreme Court in the United States of America goes ahead and makes a decision that you can no longer make prayers in schools anymore and take the Ten Commandments out of courts and all the things we've been doing all the way through to try to lessen the amount of religion in the secular world, then basically that's a function of Mem Teshari Tumah. And the Pinchas is all just a symptom of that. It's not the thing itself. The same way that your runny nose is a symptom of a cold. It's not the thing itself, it's not the cold itself. That's how you know you're sick, because it's a symptom. The immorality, the sexual promiscuity, that's a symptom of that way of thinking. And where do you see this? What's the proof of this idea? Life itself is the proof of this idea. But the Gemara itself, where's it, Raya? So Gemara says the only reason why the Jewish people wanted to be involved in Avodah Zorah, idol worship, right? They knew it was false, obviously. Pretty smart people, they came from Mitzrayim. They knew stones and wood had no power and things like that. They're fully aware of it. But why did they want anyhow to be involved in Avodah Zorah?
Cut off the relationship with God.
To do what? The Gemara says specifically to be able to have illicit relationships. That's what the Gemara says. The whole reason why they got involved in Avodah Zorah, they wanted to be involved in Avodah Zorah, was because of the fact that by doing that, they could somehow go back and Gilui Arayos. It's a politic thing. It's to tell you exact same idea. The Mem Teshari Tumah is not the Pinchas. That's just a symptom. That's maybe a drive to be able to have it. But was actually the actual 49th level of spiritual purity is the Avodah Zorah itself. It's the false reality. It's disconnected from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what opens the door for all the things that people do that they shouldn't be doing in the end. So when the Supreme Court goes ahead, makes decisions in any country, or people, whoever it's going to be, makes decisions that you shouldn't put God in the Constitution, right? As in the case in Eretz Yisroel, right? They won't even put God, which is like the Tzur is the closer we got to it. That disconnect is opening the door for all the preachers that's going to follow after that. And preachers, not just sexually speaking, but also in terms of lifestyle and things that people are going to do, and the lack of commitment to truth and reality. It's all part of the same idea. This is what the Jewish people are trying to leave. Leaving Mem Tesher Tumah, the way, what's the opposite, therefore, of Mem Tesher Tumah? What's the opposite? Yeah, and how that can be manifested in the end?
That's by having a relationship.
By Bitachin. What's the measure of relationship? It's Bitachin, right? A husband and wife who don't trust each other, no matter how much fun they have together, will not have a relationship. Two friends who believe that each one wants to sabotage the other will never become close. The measure of a relationship is always going to be the level of Bitachin. The more you can trust somebody, the deeper and more profound the relationship is going to be. So therefore, the goal of leaving Mitzrayim is specifically to develop Bitachon, not just for the sake of proving how loyal you are to Shem, but really it's the flip side of Mem Teshai Tumah. The Mem Teshai Kedusha, or Nun Shai Kedusha for that matter, is basically the Bitachon you're expressing. The more Kedusha you have, or the other way around as well, the more Bitachon you have, the more Kaddish you're going to be. So therefore, the entire process from leaving Mitzrayim until there's Canaan is specifically to develop Bitachon. It's all about that, and that's why the Meraglim, that the whole thing comes down to the Meraglim in the end, and we'll see later on, Bezrat Hashem, at some point in time, that their failure was a failure in Bitachon and Munah, right? Which sounds like those are simple words, we always throw that up, but you have to understand that if you understand what Bitachon and Munah actually is, which we'll see in a second, that we're all guilty of the same thing in the end. We're all guilty of it. I mean, obviously, we haven't achieved it. If they didn't achieve it, they were closer to the situation, except they had a galus mentality. They had a slave mentality, which we don't have. But we have a galus mentality. It's the same thing in the end. So let's see how that works. What actually is bitachon? You ask people, what is more logical? Is it more logical to believe and trust in God or not to trust in God? What's more logical? Is it more logical to trust in God or not trust in God?
Logical?
Logical.
Or difficult?
No. Didn't ask that word. What's more logical?
More logical.
That's like
it's more logical to trust in God.
Yeah?
Yeah. You're saying logical.
Logical.
If you want to be.
I agree. I'm going to make that point, obviously, but I don't know if you really,
So no,
Are you answering what I want to hear?
No, I'm answering because essentially that is more like if God created us principally to have a relationship, then it would be a direct corollary that we would have to have bitachon with him.
And being who He is, you have to assume that He'll come through in His side.
Bitachon is not a function of logic.
Oh, it's completely a function of logic.
It's an emotional thing. The mind-heart disconnect. Everyone knows this stuff. They don't do it.
That's why nobody. Oh,
Okay, so it's
right. There's a sale. Everyone knows there's a sale. Everyone knows there's a sale at Osher Ad, right? 25 bottles of whatever for $5. What do people do? They're all there. They run, right? Everybody knows that if you eat fattening food too much on the entire time, it's bad for your heart. So what do people do? They might still eat it, but they watch themselves. They cut back. They talk about it. It's a discussion. They don't just, ignore the whole thing. Everyone knows that smoking is bad for your health, right? Everyone knows. When people know something very well and they know how beneficial it is, they do it, right? The fact that people don't do bitachon is because they do believe that it's an emotional thing. It's not. They're missing a piece of information. Let me show you. It's in this week's Parsha. It's incredible. It's in this week's Parsha. This week's Parsha, but not so obvious, but you have to but nothing so obvious in Torah. When it comes to the important issues, the Kosh Baruch Hu wants you to think about these things. He wants you to work them through. The trouble is that we approach Torah like it's a child's book, like it's a little nursery rhyme. That whatever it says, that's all there is. Now, the author who wrote this nursery rhyme did not intend to tell you more than what you're reading on the page. But by Torah, this pshat, pshat, remez, drush, and sod, that everything is a function going from level to level to level. And the smallest thing can be a tremendous nuance that teaches entire, books and books and books of information. For example,
Thank you.
it says in the Parsha that the Jewish people are actually about to go into the Yam Suf, because Baruch Hu divides the water. It mentions the fact that the water was a chomah. B'yamina, it was smola, right? It was smola, right? On their right and their left, it became a wall. A chomah, right? Chomah is a wall. Chomah is spelled ches, vav, mem, hey. That's what it's called. They go into the Yam Suf, they're crossing the sea, the Mitzrayim are now pursuing them, and the Torah repeats that it's a wall on the right and the left. Except this time the Vav is missing. This time it's written Ches Mem Hey. But the little dot, you don't have in the Torah, but you have it in the Chumash, right? The little dot is what you spell Choma. It's still called Choma, but it's written Chema, right? Or Chama, right? So what does Chama mean? Chama means, anger. So therefore the Vilna Gaon explained there's a vort, right? The vort is that at that point, as the Jewish people were crossing the Yam Suf, Kodesh Baruch Hu got angry. In the middle of the crossing the sea, they got angry. Kodesh Baruch Hu got angry with them, right? Why did he get angry? So the grass is because we know that Micha took an idol out of Mitzrayim and took it with him, and he actually will take it later on to Eretz Yisroel. And then when the Shvatim, the tribes, were crossing the sea, they did it like in single file type of a thing, one shevet after the other. Not necessarily themselves, single file, but one shevet after the other. It comes Yehuda, in the order that Yaakov laid out for them, one after the other. The last one to leave the sea was Dan. And Dan was where Micha belonged to. So until everybody had left the sea but Dan, so the schus of the rest of the Shvatim counterbalanced the chov of Micha and Dan. But the moment that the last it was a Naphtali, it was the last of the Shvatim left the Yam Suf, and now it was only Shevet Dan in the actual the dry area of the sea. So now the Malachim began to say, up until now you didn't bring the waters back and to drown the Jewish people because there was a schus of the rest of Klal Yisrael. But now that Dan's the only Shevet in the sea right now, and they have the pesel, he has the Avodah Zarah over here, now you should bring the water on top of them and drown them. So it says that Kodesh Baruch Hu was angry because that was the reality. But still he didn't bring the water back on top of them. Whatever reason, was it Bechel Hashem, whatever reason, Bechel Hashem, but whatever Kodesh Baruch Hu, whatever Cheshbon, that's the Gras Pshat. Now, the Vav is always very important in Kabbalah, for sure. I mean, the Vav represents Geula, the Vav corresponds to Yosef, it's number 6, 60, Yaakov, it's all, we mentioned before in the past, the Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, and it should be followed by Ubaruch Shem Kavod Malchus Verb. The Vav at the beginning connects the two, the upper reality and the lower reality. The Vav is what's called the Vav Chibur. It unites things, it joins things together. It can take things that are present, used to be past tense and make them future tense in the Chumash, right? The Vav is an extremely, extremely important letter. But it's extremely important for one specific reason, and that is that it connects everything together. It's the connecting piece. So that's why, for example, also by the curtains around the Mishkan, you also had what's called Vavim. The little hooks that held the curtain were called Vavs because basically they connected the reality, the outside reality and the inside reality were connected through the curtain and the Vavim. That's what the Vav does, and that's what Yosef does. Yosef, the Vav corresponds to the Midah of Yesod, the trait of Yesod. Yesod is extremely important. Why? It works like this, right? Let me show you an example of Bitachin Amunah that's Bechlal, not emotional. When you walk into this house, this apartment, and the lights are off, and there's a light switch to the right, and you flick that light switch, what do you expect to happen? Lights will go on. Do you even think twice about it? No. If it doesn't go on, then you assume either the light bulb burnt out in the meantime, or the electric company, there's a blackout, now except there's light in the hallway. But when you turn that switch on, right, you expect the electricity to flow through the wires and result in light. You don't think twice about it. It's the most logical thing in the world for that light to go on. Why is it logical? Because there's wires and there's an electrical source, although the whole thing is quite miraculous, quite frankly, we don't think about it anymore. And there's a switch inside there, and the switch connects the two pieces together, and the electrons are able to flow. I mean, the whole science behind it makes it completely, it's science. We're talking science over here. And science, of course, is always logical. Well, not always, but for the most part, in this case, on this level, it's completely logical. Correct? Water. You go to that tap and cause and effect. You go to that tap and you turn the little faucet, the handle on. What do you expect to come of that faucet in the end, right? Water. right? The bears will produce water because there's water in this pipe that goes to some other places connected. Unless you see a notice on the wall that says, Hasakas Mayim, Tuesday night from 8 to 10, God forbid, because we need the water, I'll die of thirst over here, right? It's like, you expect the water to come out because there's a mareches, right? There's a marechet, at play over here. There's a system. There's a wall, there's wires, and there's electricity, and there's light bulbs, and there's filaments, and all the things. It's all there. There's many elements, but they're all there. And as long as they're all there, the marechet is complete. If, I don't have a faucet attached to the pipe coming out of the wall, I can't get the water. It's closed off, right? The water's in the pipe's in the wall's in the building, everything's connected the way it's supposed to be, but there's no faucet. If I have the faucet in the sink, but the guy forgot to put the pipe in the wall, right? It's okay. It's missing a marechet, right? Or there's a light bulb missing, or it breaks, pops. It's amazing. The whole system breaks down because a little filament inside that light bulb goes boop, and can't work anymore because the electrons they can't go across. They're coming to the light bulb. They're there, but the mareches was broken in the end. Right? You follow?
Yeah.
That's the way it works in the physical world. Bitachon works exactly the same way. Bitachon is a mareches. And the reason why it doesn't work for us is because we broke the circuits. We break the circuits. There's an expression the Lashon brings down. Ein davar omid bifnei bitachon. Some say ratzon, some say other thing, but that's the way. Nothing stands in the way of bitachon. Bitachon will always change the reality. So why doesn't my bitachon always change the reality? Because I don't have bitachon. Not completely. And the times I might, you see miracles happen. Right? What's the mareches? So basically it's like this, okay? The way that works, the whole world works the same way. The whole spiritual world works exactly the same way. The physical world works because the physical world works based upon the spiritual world. Whatever goes on in the physical world is just basically, it's a physical expression of what's going on in the spiritual world because we know the physical world is here to teach us about the spiritual world. So the same way there's a mareches in the physical world to make things work, likewise there in the mareches is a system in the spiritual world to make things work. So it comes down to, it's obviously more sophisticated than this, and if we had more time, I'd go into more detail. But the basic idea is there are 10 spheres. It's like a ladder, right? It's like electrical system. There's Or Ein Sof. We call, that's the closest we get to relate to God. There's one more level beyond that called Atzmus, which means his essence. But we don't talk about that because there's nothing to compare it to. And the moment you would think about it, more than likely you might be guilty of avodah zarah because you reduce it to a level that's not, it's too low for that level of understanding. So one day perhaps we'll
What's it called?
Atzmus, which means like essence. Like the word etzem, right? Atzmus. So we just mentioned the word Atzmus, and the Lashon the Gra is Ras of a Shuv. You can think of it a little bit, but not too much, because the mind naturally compares to understand something, will always compare to something as part of the human experience. But Atzmus is not part of the human experience, so therefore it can't be spoken about. So we don't talk about it so much, okay? The level after this is called Or Ein Sof. Or Ein Sof is literally the infinite light, and it's already, according to Kabbalah, represents God's desire to reveal himself. It's not yet a revelation we can connect to, but it's already working that direction. And then after that, we have what's called all the names of Hashem. Yudke Vavke, Kel Shakai, Elokim, Adnus, all these different names basically are the next level down, which happens inside the world that we exist. There's three levels to relate to Kush Baruch Hu. That's the one that relate to the connect to the most, okay? These correspond to 10 spheres. Right? That was a little musical interlude. These correspond to the 10 spheres, basically, for the most part.
So the names are, so Atzmus is the highest, right?
Yeah.
Or Ein Sof is the next highest, but everything derives from, or the names derive from Or Ein Sof.
Well, after that light will come into what's called the Halal, the world in which, after the Tzimtzum, right. A little bit lower down still, because the top of the system also, they don't have names yet, because it's still too abstract. But what the level of Atzilus down, basically, the names start appearing, because now God starts to reveal himself on different levels.
Is there a hierarchy in the names also?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, Yudke Vavke is like the trunk of the tree, and all of the names are branches off that trunk as they go lower down, lower down, lower down. But basically, it corresponds to 10 spheres. There's Or Ein Sof. That's the power plant. That's your what do you call it? What are those big things called?
Generator.
No, but the big power plants, electrical, like over here they have one over here, the Chashmal thing. It's like the big electrical plant, whatever it is, where they produce electricity. Generator, I guess, but it's like the big thing, where where you can't plug your toaster oven over there, because if you do, basically you become the toast, not the toast itself. It's like transformers, like the way that happens. But whatever it is, like the big electrical plant that produces the large amounts of electricity. That's the Orient Sof Kiviyachol, right? We're down here in this world, and we're quite finite. If we try to connect to God, God said, Moshe said to God, show me your face. And God says, no man can see my face and live, because your body could never handle that level of exposure to my light. So what's the point, right? So if you look at the electrical plant over here, is that you don't walk over there and pick up electricity and bring it back here. You have wires to do that. And what the wires basically do is there's a transformer that steps it down, and then it goes through another wire, and then it transforms again to another wire, and keeps stepping it down to get to a level that you can use in your house that won't blow things up, unless you have an American, hairdresser like that could, for the most part, things work, right? It's the same way. The spheres of Keser, Chachma, Bina, Chesed, Gevur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchus, there are 10 spheres. They're like transformers. They receive the light from an upper level, and they filter it. They reduce it. Keser gets it. Keser's in the level of Arachampin, gets it from Orient Sof directly. Way too powerful. No man can see my face and live. That's the level up there, and even below that, for that matter. But Adam Arishon is already connecting to the level below that, before the chet, before the sin. We don't come close to that today. So Keser filters the light and gives it over to Chachma. Then Chachma filters the light some more and gives it over to Bina. And you need all 10, because basically it results in different worlds and realities, and we call Shorashim and roots. It's a very complicated, complex system, but it's a system, nonetheless.
What does Erech Anpin actually mean?
It means long. It means Arach means like long. Anpin is nose, long nose. It's very patient.
And what is that in relationship to the spheres?
Corresponds to Keser. Arach Anpin corresponds to Keser.
That's the highest level.
That's where Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, which always never come back empty, refers to that level up there.
You say that in what?
The Yud Gimel Midas, the 13 principles of 13 attributes of mercy, which we're told never come back empty, actually go to that level up there. That's the source of bris avos, and that's the highest level inside the whole system that we live within, basically.
What do you mean it never comes back?
And that's when you invoke the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, you always get a positive response from Hashem, because that's Arach Ampin. Arach Ampin is long-winded. Anger is like short breaths, right? You get anger, right? Arach Ampin is total patience. It's said to have 2 white eyes, because white represents mercy. There's no din on that level per se, that a punishing din like we have down the worlds below. That corresponds to Keser, Arach Ampin. Again, these are all kabbalistic ideas, but it's an interesting discussion. But it's sort of a little distraction at this point in time, because just to get this point out, each sphere exists to receive light from the one above it and to give light over to the one below it. That's its existence. The same way, for example, that you were born because you had parents who got married to have you and your siblings, right? And you are here to give birth to your own children and keep it going, right? No one wants to stop the chain. We're all like links in a chain. Likewise, the spheres are also links in a chain to give light all the way down, because the whole point of creation, as we said before, is the revelation of God. That's the whole point. And God is not going to be revealed to man if the light does not get filtered down all the way down. The light gets stopped anywhere along the way. You have what's called Hester Panim. There's no connection to Kosh Baruch Hu, and the purpose of creation is unfulfilled. And that's when God steps in and usually brings a lot of destruction to get things back on track again. So there's a system. And wherever that light goes, there's Shefa, there's blessing, and there's success. The Jewish people, the Medrash asked the question, it says the Jewish people went in to the Yamsu, the Yamu Yabasha, right? Into the sea on dry land. So we take for granted, it means like, well, there was once a sea there, and now it's not. Now it's dry land, so that's what the Medrash means. That's what the Torah means. The Medrash takes it very literally. The Medrash says, make up your mind. Was it Yam or was it Yabasha? Which one was it? Right? Was it dry land or was it sea? So the Medrash says it was both. How could it be both? Because in the beginning it was sea. It hadn't split yet. The entire nation walked into the Yamsuf up until their nostrils. At which point they go past that, now they're going to drown. Can you imagine the whole nation's like wading in the water up to here? Not just he was the first. Nachman was the first one to go in, but the whole nation jumped in after that. They're all in the Yamsuf, the entire people up to their nostrils. I guess the kids are being helped up, whatever the other people, but enough people are in the Yamsuf. And then once it got to their nostrils, the sea split, became Yabasha, became dry land. That's the way the Medrash explains it. So the Zohar on this idea says that this is what it means, Ma titzak alai. Moshe is davening to Kosh Baruch Hu, and Kosh Baruch Hu says, what are you davening for? It doesn't depend upon your tefillahs, right? Don't daven now. So the Gemara says the reason, the time of din, and davening, Kedusha goes to the Klippas and all that, but that's a different story, right? The Pashat of the Zohar is, Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, lo, it's not tefillah, but tefillah, but bitachon, Talia Milsa, says the Zohar. Other versions of Atika Kedisha, Talia Milsa, but the Zohar says, but bitachon shalem, on the bitachon, the thing depends. This sea ain't going to split because of your tefillah. Moshe, you daven beautifully, and you got a powerful tefillah, no question about that. But what does tefillah mean? What's tefillah? It's bakasha. You're making a request. What's the request? Split the sea. Why is it a request? Because I don't merit it, right? If you have money that belongs to me, technically speaking, I can demand it back. I don't have to say, would you mind giving me back my money? I can simply say, give me my money. It's my money. I'm not so polite by doing that, but it's within my right, right? You have my money. Instead, to be polite there, I said, would you mind giving back my money? But if it's your money, and you don't owe me anything, and I want some money from you, then I say to you, would you mind, can I borrow like $5? Is it okay? Can I have a little money? Is that okay? Do you mind? Because it's bakasha. Bakasha means it's not mine. I'm requesting it. I'm asking for that which does not belong to me. That, for the most part, is tefillah. Tefillah, for the most part, is asking Kosh Baruch Hu for things that don't belong. We don't necessarily deserve these things. Hatzlacha my exam. Who says you deserve it? Hatzlacha my business. Who says you deserve it? Who stands and says to Kosh Baruch Hu, you better make this business deal go through, because you and I both know I deserve this. Who could say a thing like that? Who would say a thing like that? So, Rashi brings down a Parashat Beshallach, tzaddikim could make requests because they do know they have it coming to them, but they rather get manas chinam, but it's not so the team, to do things like that. But certainly the rest of us, who would make a request like that? A tefillah is a bakasha. You're asking for that which does not belong to you. And that's what Jews do. What do you mean, don't daven to me? That's what Jews do. We ask Kosh Baruch Hu all the time for favors and for gifts. Yeah, but there's asking for gifts. You come to Mincha today, tomorrow, Shachris tomorrow, Kosh Baruch Hu, say with your mind. Yesterday I asked you, for a little bit, a little help in my business deal over here. You asked me a little hatzlacha in my learning. Today, I just want to up it a little bit. Would you mind, just $10 million? Just, please. How about the lottery? It's not even your money. Everybody else paid, right? They all paid for the lottery. It belongs to the government. Just let me win the lottery. It's like, people probably do dumb for things like that. But it's like a little absurd, right? Not because I deserve it. What am I making the request for? It's a large request. Everybody knows to make a request like that, you better have a lot of zchuyah. But who has those kind of merits? So Kosh Baruch Hu says, Moshe, if you're asking for the man, or you're asking for meat, or you're asking for help with Paro, right? And you daven, or you're asking to remove all these things and all these dead bodies of animals, not for the plague, fine, daven, that's what you're supposed to do. But you're asking me to split the sea for a nation? That's huge. That takes a lot of, not just your zchuyot, but the zchuyot of Klal Yisrael takes a lot of zchuyot, tons of merit. What? Ma titzak alai? What are you davening for? That's like asking for $1 trillion over here. That's a lot of zchuyot. So Moshe goes, and then what? What am I supposed to do? The Egyptians over there, and the Jewish people over there, and they're like, we're about to be trapped and wiped away, and everyone's like being, sarcastic. What? There's not a place to bear some mitzvah. So what am I supposed to do? There's no answer. If the fields aren't going to work, and up until now, that's all I thought we had, in our arsenal in the first place. If the fields aren't going to work to split the sea, so what could do it? So Kosh Baruch Hu says, Bitachin could do it. Bitachin could do it. What are we supposed to do? Just keep walking to that sea, and keep walking to that sea, up until your nostrils, so you can't walk any further. So why is that not called being samach on a nes? That's, the Gemara says in Shabbos, very, very specifically, right, that a person should not put themselves in a situation of danger and rely upon a miracle, because in doing so, either the miracle won't happen for you, in which case you're not responsible for putting yourself in danger and maybe even costing you, God forbid, your life, right? Or the miracle will happen for you, and you didn't deserve it, and it's going to come off your mercy in the world to come, and who wants that? So don't put yourself in a situation of danger, and therefore don't rely upon miracles. We ain't some nis. We don't rely upon miracles.
Staying in that one place would have been so much fun.
It's Shaval Tasa. Right? What else are you going to do? They had no place else to go. So that was where they were. They didn't put themselves in that predicament, but walking to the sea up to your nostrils is drowning. That's already different. You're taking action now, right? So why is it not called being Samach Hanes? You could say because Kosh Baruch Hu told them, so Kosh Baruch Hu tells you to do it. It's also not called being Samach Hanes, not relying upon a miracle, perhaps. But be wrong. Why is it not called being Samach Hanes? So the answer is another Gemara elsewhere. As I point out all the time, we're not really like maker uppers of new ideas. We're basically weavers. The answers are always there in Shas, in the Chumash, in the Midrashi. It's like this patchwork. There's a piece over here. There's a piece over there. As long as you just pull them all together, the big picture begins to merge. So there's another Gemara elsewhere, right? What does the Gemara say? The Gemara says, thank you very much. The Gemara says in Tainus that a few stories of Chinin Bedos, the miracle worker. He's a miracle worker. Tons of miracles. His daughter comes in one day of Shabbos, after she lit the Shabbos candles, and she said, Abba, I lit vinegar instead of oil. It's a problem, right? They lit, and they're burning. It's like really nice the way it's burning over here, but maybe I'm in trouble. Maybe I was samech on a miracle, right? Maybe it's gonna come off my cheshbon later on, the entire time. So her father answers a very important answer. He says it all depends. It depends on you. Not on the reality or the world, but it depends upon you. If you understand that oil burns, right, is combustible because it's a miracle, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself tells the oil to burn each and every time, there's no reason for oil to burn any more than there is for vinegar to burn. It's all miracle in the end. Then the fact that vinegar is burning for you is no big deal, because you're living on the reality that everything's a nace anyhow. You're living in the reality because Baruch Hu makes everything happen as a fresh miracle. Every single birth is not natural. A natural birth is really quite an oxymoron. We talk about it that way, but every birth's a miracle. The birth of life, the birth of the miracle of birth, the miracle of birth, the miracle of life itself, right? So if you understand, and that's the reality for you, then this is perfectly fine, and you can do miracles just like I do miracles the entire time. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, putting a few words here, but that's the mashman of the entire story. The problem with the rest of us is we believe in Teva. We believe in Teva. We believe in this cause and effect relationship as being engraved in stone. We forget the fact, as Aleshim explained, that everything in the physical world has at its core or Ein Sof, which is unlimited and unbound. It's the source of all miracles. The miracle for the sea to split is not just HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying sea split. The water itself has Or Ein Sof inside of it, and when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says so, the Or Ein Sof kicks in and makes the water go against its so-called Teva. The same thing is true of us as well. We have a miraculous component that we can tap into and live L'Malam Teva. We're doing it right now in this country. This is we point out. How many times surrounded by so many enemies, and this very day having a shir like we're someplace downtown New York, more or less safe from enemies. I don't know today how much that's true anymore, but certainly we're living the lion's den over here because we're living L'Malam Teva, and the way the country developed in 70 short years, L'Malam Teva. We all talk about it. We don't believe it. Well, we do believe it, but we're not real with what those words mean. We say them, but we don't understand the implication of them in the end, to tap into it. My personal life for the last 13 years, when I look back over the last 15 some years in Eretz Yisroel, and I try and figure out how I got to where I am today, and I'm still surviving, right? I'm still feeding my kids, and it's like one miracle after another miracle after another miracle after another miracle after another miracle that I start to shake and shudder, thinking to myself, what if one of those miracles didn't happen in the end? And the same story for this person, and for that person, and for that person. It's incredible miracles, one after the other. Because of the Malreches, right? In Eretz Yisrael, that's where the circuit's completed to a large degree. And that's where there's more Shgacha Pratis here than the rest of the world. But anywhere in the world, this is true. What's the problem, right? The problem is like this. And this is what Chaim Ben Dosa is telling his daughter, and this is what the Parsha is telling us in the end. right? You have the pipes in the wall, and you got the sink, but there's no faucet. The faucet's important, right? You can have all the water you want in the pipe in the wall, and you get a beautiful sink, nice big sink to catch it, to wash your dishes, to serve your drinks. Without that there's a connection missing over here, or the same thing over here, the light switch. It's all wired, right? The contractor did a beautiful job wiring the ceiling, wiring the walls. Bring it to the switch over here, but there's no switch, right? There's a wire down here, there's a wire up there, but nothing to connect them. It's as if there's no wire, no light bulb, no electricity, because you can't use it again. It's that one little switch. So what's that switch? What connects up the upper 8 spheres? Actually, upper 8 spheres with the 10th one. Malchus is the world in which we live. Malchus is the world in which we live. That's the world we're developing, right? Oh, Malchus Shemayim, to bring the Malchus down here. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus Hamved. We're trying to make this a Malchus because Baruch, but we're building it. The Malchus already exists. The Malchus actually, the name for the Malchus is actually Eretz. It's actually called the land because it corresponds to the world we live in, basically. But the Malchus is the world in which we live. The upper 8 spheres of Keser, Chachma, Bina, all the way down to Hod is just the Mareches. The flow of Shefa and blessing and light and miracle from Shemayim. That's the natural thing. That's what Chaim Bedos tells his daughter. That's nature. Nature is miracle, and miracle is nature. That's the way it works. Every day that sun comes up, it's a new sunrise. It's not the same thing that happened yesterday. It's not an automatic pilot. It may look like that, but every day Kodesh Baruch Hu wills that sun to come up miraculously. Day after day after day, and follow this path and that path. And maybe that's the reason why things shift all the time. It doesn't say the same pattern the entire way through. To keep reminding us how much of it's a miracle, how every single day Kodesh Baruch Hu is renewing Ma'aseh Bereshis. But you have to have the bearers, right? So in the Chumash, who's that bearers?
Where?
No, but in the Chumash.
Not sure.
In the Chumash?
In the Chumash, who's the example of a bearers, of a faucet?
Not sure.
Later on, but not right now. In the beginning. In part, it's Sefer Bereshis.
Yeah.
Well, he's also too one specific person, though. He's the Mechalkel. Right? He's the one that feeds everybody. No, in the Chumash,
No?
Yosef. Yosef. He's the one who takes the bracha from God and gives it to everybody else. What does he correspond to? Which is what? Yesod. He's the midah of Yesod. Yesod is the connecting piece. People have children because of Yesod. The concept of Yesod is the idea, teachers are on the level of Yesod. A good teacher by definition functions in the role of Yesod. Why? Because the light comes down from above. The students are like the basin, so to speak, to catch it all. But someone has to make it possible, make it accessible. That's the teacher. He's the one through whom the light will flow into the world. Right? Anytime anybody's acting in a capacity to connect up HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the rest of the world, will always be functioning in the realm of the role of Yesod. That's what Yesod does. Yesod is specifically the source of Shefa, Bruch, and blessing in the world. That's the bearers.
Is that the one directly above
Malchus, yeah. It connects up Malchus with the upper 8 spheres. That's the Mareches. As long as the Yesod, the 8 are never missing. The Mem Hey of Choma corresponds to one of the Shem of Baruch Hu's names, which has to do with connection with the Malchus, a little bit more complicated to go into. But the upper 8 spheres are always there. Just like the wires are in the ceiling and the walls, and there's electricity that can flow into them upon demand, the upper 8 spheres are always in place to bring light from God down to us. And the world in which we live is always there. That's the Malchus, that's the basin, right? That's the light bulb, whatever the case may be. The water was a better example. What's missing is the bearers. It's all, as long as put the bearers in, the water will naturally flow. Put the Yesod into the Mareches, and the light will naturally flow into the world. Naturally. So how do you do that? How do you function the role? How do you function the role of Yesod? What does it? What makes Yesod in the end? Right. Exactly. And what's Yosef's main midah, right? Is bitachon. Trust in God. Why? How is that the case? Because bitachon is that which connects you to Hashem. Bitachon is that which glues you to Kodesh Baruch Hu. It's trust that makes things connect, that brings and makes things one. How do you become basar echad? How do you do it? You go to a hospital and say, join us up at the seams over here, back to back, make a Siamese twins. How does a husband and wife become basar echad? What's the main thing that's going to make them physical contact, right? Physical intimacy. The whole world does it all the time. And they'll pay for it, and there's no relationship. Tons of couples can have that and have no relationship in the end, and be fighting the entire time. They can be physically close and then spiritually miles apart. What? And the reverse is also true. They can lack the physical intimacy, but if there's trust, the famous story of the husband and wife go to the doctor. The wife's leg is sore. They're an older couple already at this point in time, so it took a long time to develop, their trust in one another until they became like one. And the nurse says, "What's the problem today?" And the husband says, "We've hurt our leg, right? It's our leg now, not just my wife's leg. It's our leg. We became a unit, became basar echad." What is the key ingredient that makes anything basar echad, makes things one? Is bitachon, trust. Yeah, 100%. What else is there?
Accepting the difference.
No, that's a symptom.
Different.
No, that's a symptom. You will never. What? You meet someone the first time. He says, "Accept me. Accept me for the way I am." Do you do it?
Depends how much self-confidence you have in yourself.
No, then you'd be foolish, because this person can be a rip-off artist. What do you need to know? What do you need to know in a business relationship? What do you need to know? What's the one thing you want to know about a business partner and a marital partner or your children or anything in this world? What's the one thing that's totally invaluable for every relationship? Relationship stands on it completely. You cannot have unity until it's there. It's trust. And trust is something you build and you earn. Acceptability is all based upon trust. The more I can trust you, the more I accept you. I may not like the way you look, I may not like the way I look, right? The way I talk, but if I'm trustworthy, you'll trust me, you'll accept me, and you'll overlook everything else in the end. Because trust is what joins people together. Trust is what joins everything together in the end. That's the source of basar echad. When God says, therefore a man should leave his father and mother.
What are you trusting? That they won't hurt you?
That's a part of it. But whatever you need in your life to have to depend upon other people, for example, I need to trust that my spouse won't spend all my money, wantonly and waste money. Or to run off and buy things that are totally wasteful. Or that if I leave the house for a while, I know that my kids are taken care of. Or that things will fall, whatever. And she looks at me and she trusts in me that I'll bring a provider and a nice guy and all these things. The moment you can't trust somebody, the whole relationship falls apart. No matter how beautiful they are, or handsome, no matter how talented they are, how well they speak. That's why you always find, it's amazing, like these Hollywood couples, get married. It's like the perfect match. He's the most handsome person in the world, and she's the most beautiful person in the world. And 6 weeks later, they're getting a divorce. And people are going, "How could people so attractive get a divorce? It's like the perfect marriage." But no personality, no basis for trust in the end. Trust
is clear then. It's constancy in that case.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's a measure of trust. It's constantly how much does the trust us? The guy turns around, falls backwards into your arms, right? You believe I'll catch you, right? You believe I'll catch you. That's all about life. So that's what Bitachon represents. Bitachon, because Baruch Hu says, he says, you can't daven for the miracle of crossing the sea, because that's a miracle. That's lamal meteva. If you're believing that there's a thing called teva, and it's fixed, right? And that the reason why oil burns is because oil is combustible and vinegar is not, and there are rules like that in Ma'aseh Bereshis. If that's the way you're believing, and now you're going to cross a dangerous bridge or cross the sea, that's a miracle. If you're going to ask me for a miracle, ante up, I got to pay. So you know the schuyah here, all the bonus points, frequent flyer miles, they don't count over here, right? It's not going to buy what you need over here. You need schuyot, and you guys simply don't have them. Can't make the bakasha. But bitachon, I don't have to be in the picture anymore, Kadosh Baruch Hu says. You can do it all on your own. That's the mareches. Right? The same way, the builder's no longer here anymore, and the guy who sold you the apartment's not on here anymore. You walk in the front door, he's not there to turn the light switch on. You do it yourself. It's automatic. Flick the switch, the light's there. Because it's built, the system's there. That's the Mareches. Because Baruch Hu says, Bitachin, you connect yourself to me to such a degree. There literally is like, that chain of human beings where one person's holding over here and one person's holding over here. The moment that you can connect to me on such a level like that, the light will flow through and you will make the miracle happen. You. Because the Shefa and the Leshem is very makbid about this. The Shefa is sitting there waiting to come down. There's nothing HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not do for you. Everything, your wildest imagination, whatever you think you need, He's already put aside way more than that. So why is it not going to be down to me? I'm not connected. It's there, in the walls, in the ceiling. I'm here, ready to receive it. But there's no intermediary. You want it. You want to bring the light from over there to there? Right, watch this, guys. This will impress you, right? I will take that light switch out of the wall and separate the wires and sit here and go, light, go on. And the light goes on. What are you going to think? I'm a magician, no? I mean, that's magic. Because there's no circuit there. How do you do it? There must be an invisible circuit somewhere. Maybe it's a different circuit, right? Because it's got to be connected. It's not connected. It's a miracle. If you're going to bring the current from one to the other side without a wire in between, that's a miracle. That's Lamam Teva. You want to split the sea without the Schuyot, and you believe in Teva? That's a miracle. Can't do that. You bring Samach and Anes. But you're going to have Bitachin to walk into the sea up into your nostrils and believe that water is going to split. You know the difference? You know what the difference is like? The difference is basically an example, just a random example, right? The difference is that the difference is like this: a bill comes in for 3 times the amount of money that you expect, to have that bill to come in, and you only have enough for one times the amount of money. You're missing 2 times the amount of money over here, and you check your bank and you're short. There's no money there to cover this bill. And you can't call your parents because they already asked them for money last month, right? You can't call your wife's parents because they gave you money to, and you got nowhere to go. There's nowhere to turn. You can't borrow from the bank. Your Visa card is maxed out. Whatever there's nowhere to turn. But you say, what am I talking about? God runs the world. He can solve this problem. Just because I can't see the solution doesn't mean he doesn't see the solution. I am going to rise to the level of Bitachin over here, and I know nothing stands in the way of Bitachin. I'm going to literally believe that when that bill comes up and I got to pay it, that money's going to be there. Not like, let's see if the money's going to be there. Let's hope the money's going to be. No. I am going to go to the bank as if that money's there. I'm going to go to the bank literally as if the money was there in the first place. The problem never existed. Write the check. I'm holding there, right? That's Bitachin, and the money will be there. But we're not holding there. A little voice in the back of the mind's going, come on, who are you kidding? Last month you did a Kosh Baruch and you don't have any yet. You do there. It's like, no. It's not going to happen. And the Lashon brings down, he says, and he brings the Pesukim from Tehillim, right? Where David Melch says, they didn't believe in your wonders. How can you not believe in the wonders? You see the sea split. No, I didn't say anything. There's no sea splitting over here. No, a big wind came along. Someone sneezed and the water like this. Maybe it was Paro, maybe it was special effects. Who knows? I don't know. The sea split? No, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. I don't see it. Or the pillar of fire. Yeah, it's quite a tall lighter you have there. It's like someone lit the all the way up there, and he just follows. Who's holding that thing? Well, no one's holding it. Didn't believe in the wonders? They believed in the wonders. They believed in them. What does it mean? They didn't believe in the wonders, and that's why their Bitachon failed. They kept believing that was a miracle. They kept believing that was extraordinary, and therefore it was a schus-oriented thing. They didn't understand that was the most natural thing in the world to happen for people with the level of Bitachon. Because Baruch was educating them, telling them, if you got, and he keeps saying this, by the way, and the man is about this, and the whole, everything, the whole Parashas is about this, basically is about the same idea. If you just understand that this is the way the world's meant to be, and that's why they get punished by asking the question, Hayesh Hashem b'kibeinu im ayin? They're not asking, is God amongst us? They're asking, what level of God? The Leshem says this. What level of God is amongst us? The level of God that, like Par was talking about, who runs things b'derech teva, and therefore it's all based upon merit, and we all know we have no merits, so going to the desert will be dangerous, or the level of God who's doing all these fantastic miracles even without the merits involved. And God says, you're asking that question, right? Someone comes along and takes care of you, day after day after day. You have to buy a bike, they buy the bike. You got to buy supplies for school, they buy the supplies. You get hungry, they come to school and they deliver the thing, right? It's unbelievable. Every time you need them, they're there. Every time. And one day, you're talking with this person, and the person, and you say to the person, yeah, but will you be there when I need you? What? What? Up until now, I've been there for everything you've needed, and I've done it without even asking. And you're asking, will I be there when I need? What else do you need to see in the end? That's the question they asked. Because Baruch had shown them that they can live l'malam teva. They had done it. They left Mitzrayim that way. Al kanfei nesharim, not the street over here, but the one that talked about the Chumash, right? They came, and everything has been this way, but they, just couldn't get it. So because Baruch brought them back to the sea to experience how Bitachin can control reality. But even the tefillos of the great Moshe Rabbeinu could not have the impact of Ma'aseh Bereshis, the Bitachon of 3 million Jews could have on Kriyas Yam Suf, on the Yam Suf itself. We struggled the whole way through, and we've been struggling now for 3,000 years. And the moment we understand what that means, and we're going to find the hard way in the end. It's going to happen anyhow. It's happening slowly now, but find the hard way. We'll find out what that Bitachon, what it really means, the koyach of Bitachon. Not just at an individual level, but on the national level. And we'll see it. And that's really, if you stand back, that's the dividing point right now in the Jewish people. We're here in Eretz Yisroel at this stage of history because we're tapping into Bitachon. That's the only explanation. Otherwise, we're suicidal. And we're living a life here that's normal as much as possible because of Bitachon. And for the most part, the people who won't come here is because of lack of Bitachon. Some people are for technical reasons. They'd rather be here, but they can't because whatever is holding them back. Fine, because Baruch understands that, and there's patience with that, and that's perfectly normal and halachically acceptable and ashkafically acceptable. They would be here if it wasn't for the other halachic reality. But the rest of the people have no excuse for not being here. After all, Baruch has done to build the place up, they have no desire to be here. Just a lack of bitachon. And therefore, as the Medrash says, at the end of the days, Mashiach finally comes and stands there, and the people from the diaspora come to Mashiach and Eretz Yisroel and see Klal Yisrael living, the ones that were here before Mashiach came, flying around like malachim, like they will happen to Chiyas HaMesim early, and the people from the diaspora, the Medrash says, will say, hey, we want to do that too. We want to live on that level as well. Aren't we Jews also? Says the Medrash, says the Rizal, that Mashiach will say, what are you talking about? Everybody knows that Kodesh Baruch Hu works, midah k'neged midah, measure for measure. These people put spiritual priorities ahead of physical priorities. They risked, their lives physically to be able to live in a land that was ruchni, spiritually, spiritual, right? And for that reason, midah k'neged midah, they have all this l'malam teva reality all the time, right? The rest of you put the physical world before the spiritual. And for that reason, you'll be physical until the Chiyas HaMesim. No, you can't have that, because you didn't earn that. And that is a function of Bitachon. And Bitachon is connecting and making the Mareches work. And with that Mareches in place, the light just flows, just like electricity through the wires, it flows. And the light goes on, and the Shefa, grows, and the world is improved and enhanced and changed, and Kodesh Baruch Hu is more revealed, because that's the natural way the world is supposed to function. The lack of Bitachon and the lack of miracles, that's not logical, that's emotional. That's a lack of logic in the end. So yes, in answer to the question, it's much more logical to have bitachon and to not have bitachon. Hashem made the world. He runs the world. He controls everything. He wants nothing but to connect to man. Nothing but to reveal himself in Ma'aseh Bereshis. Nothing but to live, to make the world miraculous. That's his ideal situation. He only holds back because we refuse to receive that shefa.